You're thirsty. Not the kind of thirsty you feel after a workout, the kind that makes every step feel heavier than the last. You've been walking for hours beneath the scorching African sun. Finally, you hear it, the sound of running water, a small river. You kneel down, your hands touch the cool surface. For the first time today, you relax. Then, the water explodes. A crocodile launches out with terrifying speed, snapping its jaws shut exactly where your head was a second earlier. You fall backward, your heart pounding. The crocodile disappears beneath the water as quickly as it appeared. You survived, but only just. And tomorrow, you'll have to come back, because water isn't optional. For ancient humans, every meal, every drink, every journey was a gamble with death. So here's the question. How did humans survive in a world where almost everything was stronger, faster, and deadlier than they were? Because 100,000 years ago, Earth didn't belong to us. It belonged to predators. Imagine opening your front door today. The biggest danger might be traffic. Now imagine opening your cave instead. Outside, a giant hyena could be waiting. A leopard might be hiding in the trees. A snake could be resting beneath the rock you're about to step on. Death wasn't rare, it was routine. Long before humans became hunters, we were hunted. Archaeologists know this because our ancestors left behind terrifying evidence. Ancient skulls discovered in Africa still carry puncture marks that perfectly match the teeth of giant predators. Some belong to children, others to adults who never made it home. For millions of years, humans weren't at the top of the food chain. We were somewhere near the middle, always watching, always listening, always afraid. If you lived in Ice Age Europe, your greatest nightmare wasn't the cold. It was the cave lion. Larger than today's African lion, it hunted massive animals like horses and bison. To a hungry cave lion, a lone human wasn't a threat. It was lunch. Travel north, and things became even worse. Towering over forests stood the short-faced bear. When it rose onto its hind legs, it could reach nearly 12 feet tall. It wasn't just powerful, it was fast. Fast enough to outrun a horse over short distances. Then came the packs. Dire wolves, giant hyenas, predators that didn't hunt alone. They hunted together, surrounding their prey, cutting off every escape. Sound familiar? Because thousands of years later, humans would learn the exact same strategy. But at the beginning, we weren't the hunters. We were the ones trying not to become dinner. Here's what's strange. Compared to every predator alive, humans looked almost defenseless. Our teeth? Too small. Our claws? Almost useless. Our skin? Thin enough to tear on sharp branches. Even our babies were a problem. Most newborn animals can stand within hours. A human baby can't even hold up its own head. For years, it depends entirely on others. From an evolutionary perspective, that sounds like a terrible survival strategy. So why didn't humans disappear? Why aren't we just another extinct species buried beneath ancient rocks? The answer isn't what most people think. It wasn't strength. It wasn't speed. It wasn't even intelligence. Not at first. Before humans could outthink predators, they first had to outlast them. And that story begins with one of the most terrifying moments any ancient human experienced: nightfall. Today, darkness is an inconvenience. You flip a switch, turn on your phone, walk through a brightly lit street. Ancient humans had none of that. When the sun disappeared, the world changed. Predators that spent the day resting suddenly came alive. Lions hunted beneath the cover of darkness. Hyenas filled the night with eerie calls. Leopards moved silently between trees. Humans couldn't see them, but those predators could see humans perfectly. Imagine trying to sleep, knowing something outside your shelter might already be watching. Anthropologists believe early humans rarely slept alone. Entire groups gathered close together, children in the middle, adults around the edges. Not because they enjoyed sleeping shoulder to shoulder, but because a single person alone was an easy target. Together, they were harder to attack. It wasn't comfort, it was survival. But even numbers weren't enough, because sooner or later, every group had to face the same terrifying problem. The darkness kept getting closer, until one discovery changed human history forever: fire. Nobody knows who discovered fire first. Maybe it was a lightning strike that set a tree ablaze. Maybe it was a wildfire that left behind burning branches. But imagine being the first human brave enough to pick up that burning stick. For every other animal, fire meant danger. For humans, lions. It became opportunity. For the first time in history, the night no longer belonged entirely to predators.
A campfire didn't just produce light, it created a boundary. Even today, lions, wolves, and bears hesitate to approach open flames. That meant ancient families could finally rest without constantly looking over their shoulders. But fire did something even more important. It gave humans time. Before fire, sunset ended the day. After fire, people stayed awake for hours. They repaired tools, shared stories, planned hunts, taught children. Knowledge that once disappeared with every generation could now survive around the flames. A campfire became humanity's first classroom, but even that wasn't enough to defeat the world's deadliest predators. Humans still had one huge problem. They were slow. Imagine you're a gazelle. You spot humans in the distance. You run. A few minutes later, you stop. Nobody is chasing you. Then, there they are again, walking, slowly, patiently. You run once more. Hours pass. Every time you stop, the humans appear again. Not sprinting, not shouting, just following. Eventually, your body begins to overheat. You can't cool yourself while running. The humans can. Because unlike almost every predator on Earth, humans sweat. Millions of tiny sweat glands allow us to keep moving long after other animals are forced to rest. Scientists call this persistence hunting. Instead of being the fastest, humans became the most patient. Sometimes survival isn't about winning the race. It's about refusing to quit. But humanity's greatest weapon wasn't fire. It wasn't endurance. It wasn't even the spear. It was something far more powerful. Cooperation. A lion hunts with its pride. A wolf hunts with its pack. But humans did something different. They planned. Imagine 5 hunters facing a massive cave lion. One distracts it. 2 hide behind rocks. Another waits with a spear. The last blocks its escape. Every person knows exactly what to do. Not because instinct tells them, because someone explained the plan before the hunt even began. Language changed everything. One person's experience became everyone's survival guide. Every mistake became a lesson. Every lesson became an advantage. Predators evolved through biology. Humans evolved through ideas. And ideas spread much faster than genes. Around 70,000 years ago, humans began leaving Africa. They spread into Europe, Asia, Australia, eventually the Americas. And everywhere they went, the balance of nature slowly changed. The same creatures that had hunted humans for millions of years now found themselves hunted instead. Some disappeared because the climate changed. Others couldn't adapt to a new predator, a predator that didn't rely on claws or teeth or strength. One that built traps, made weapons, worked together, and remembered every lesson. For the first time in Earth's history, intelligence had become the most dangerous weapon of all. People often say humans conquered the world because we were smarter than every other animal. That's only half the truth. A genius alone in the wilderness would still become food. What truly changed history was that humans never survived alone. If someone was injured, others carried them. If a hunter failed, someone shared food. If one person discovered a safer path, the whole tribe learned it. Archaeologists have even discovered ancient skeletons belonging to people who survived for years despite broken legs, blindness, or losing all their teeth. In the wild, that should have been impossible unless someone cared for them. Predators abandoned the weak. Humans protected them. And those people repaid the tribe with something priceless. Experience, stories, knowledge. Generation after generation, those lessons accumulated until one day, the weakest ape on Earth became the strongest force nature had ever seen. For millions of years, our ancestors lived in fear. Every trip to a river could end in death. Every night might be their last. Every strange sound in the darkness could mean a predator was only a few steps away. Yet somehow, they endured. Not because they were the strongest, not because they were fearless, but because every weakness forced them to invent something better. When they couldn't fight with claws, they made spears. When they couldn't see in the dark, they made fire. When they couldn't survive alone, they built communities. That's the story of humanity. Not a story of strength, but a story of adaptation. Maybe that's why humans are still here, while the cave lions, the giant hyenas, And the saber-toothed cats exist only as fossils because evolution doesn't always reward the strongest. Sometimes it rewards the species willing to learn. And perhaps that's the greatest weapon our ancestors ever created. Not fire, not tools, not even language, but the ability to pass knowledge from one generation to the next. Because in the end, the world's deadliest predator was never the lion. It was a small group of humans who refused to stop learning,